if you get that, I mean, Einstein's famous observation was that, imagination is more important than knowledge. If you can learn how important your imagination is, and that's where your spirit is, in that place, and then once you go to that place, in what it is you'd like to attract into your life, you're coming from a spiritual place, absolutely nothing is impossible.
Yeah. How would you define spirituality?
I think it's, again, Einstein was one of my heroes, and they asked him about quantum physics and all of these technical questions, and I remember him saying, he said, they're just details. He said, I'd like to really learn to think like God thinks. I think, I was down in Australia a couple of years ago, and I was on a show there, the Tonight Show down there in Australia, the equivalent of the Tonight Show here. And the woman asked me, what is your mission? And I just blurted out, to live a God-realized life. And she asked me what that meant. And I said, I think that means to learn to think like God thinks. Like, how does the source of all things, if you could put it into a context of how does it think? How does God think? The only thing that God thinks, it seems to me, is like if these were the hands of God, you'd say, well, what does God do with his hands? Well, the only thing he does with his hands is that he gives. And spirituality is that. It's taking your attention off of yourself. Like the first 9 months that you were alive, inside your mother's womb, there was absolutely nothing for you to do. You just let go and you let God, which is what we say in the recovery movement. You just let go and you just allow. And you can't interfere with the process. There's nothing, there's an invisible intelligence that is allowing this growing fetus to have its nose show up, its heart starts beating in 1 second, and after 9 months, it comes out and we look at this beautiful little creature and we say, great work, God, we'll take over from here. And in the taking over process, we create what we call a false self. Yeah. And the false self is the ego.
That's when separation occurs, right?
Absolutely.
That's when we separate from source.
Right.
Right.
And then with that separation, we call it edging God out, E-G-O, the ego. That's the ego. And we take on this false self, and we start to believe that who I am is not this divine perfection from which I originated, but who I am is what I do and what I have and what I accomplish and what other people think of me, and who I am is separate from everybody else, and even most egregiously, who I am is separate from God. Yeah. We begin to believe all of these things, and that's the opposite of, you asked me about spirituality. It's to go back to the place from which you originated and to live from that, which means it's about serving. Yeah. It's about offering. Lao Tzu spoke about this in the Tao Te Ching. He said your original nature is based on 4 cardinal virtues. And the cardinal virtues, if you can live them, this is who you are as a being. Reverence for all of life, just finding love in all things. The planet, the plants, the human beings, the animals, everything. You have reverence for all of it. You kill nothing. A natural kind of sincerity, which means a sense of honesty about not just not stealing, but about who you are as a human being. And a sense of kindness, just being kind to each other and to everyone and everything. And also service. Those are the 4 cardinal virtues. Reverence for all of life, honesty, kindness, service. That's a spiritual life. And that's what a God-realized life is. It's how I try to live my life.
That's wonderful.
Getting rid of this ego.
Yeah.
It's a tough master.
It's a tough one.
It's a very tough master. I mean, the ultimate, even in relationships, Mariel, I mean, one of the hardest things we have to do in relationships is to try to love like God loves. I quote in the film, I quote Hafiz, the great Persian poet. He said, even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, you owe me. He said, just think what a love like that can do. It lights up the whole world.
Without any expectation.
That's spirituality. Yeah. It's like just living your life from a place of giving and offering
without any
and
expectation,
serving. And in our relationships, particularly our love relationships with each other, to be able to love someone who doesn't love you back, to be able to love someone who abandons you, someone who walks out on you, to be able to love a person who criticizes you or who just doesn't want anything to do with you, but that you love. That's the ultimate test, and it's one of the tests that the ultimate love, I don't know if you have any children or not, but
I do. Yeah,
so the
two
ultimate
daughters.
love is generally a mother's love for her child.
Yeah.
Because that's the God kind of love.
That is.
You don't look
Yeah,
at that
absolutely.
child who's crying and screaming in the middle of the night and say, you know, what do you think you're doing, and you're bothering me and all that. You just offer them. You just you take that child, you put it to your breast, you feed them, you hold them, you comfort them, and if they cry 24 straight hours, you still do that.
Yeah.
It's like, and they don't have to love you back. They don't have to do anything. Try to take that kind of love and apply it in our relationships. That's when we push the ego out, because the ego always wants to own something. It always thinks that, I'll tell you.
Always wants to be right.
Right. It wants to be right,
Yeah,
and
I
it
know
wants
that
to
one.
own things. I'll tell you a great story. My friend David Simon told me this story. You know who Deepak Chopra is, I'm
Yes.
sure, a dear friend of mine. And his son Gotham was in New Delhi. And he went into and he was given an example of this at the Chopra Center when I was sitting in on the audience. And Gotham went to the movie theater in Delhi, put his hat on a chair, and went in to get some popcorn. He went, got his popcorn, came back, and somebody was sitting in his chair. And he said to the gentleman who was sitting in his chair, he said, "Excuse me, but that's my chair." And the gentleman said to him, he said, "Well, how do you know it's your chair?" He said, "Well, I put my hat on it." He said, "That's how I know it's my chair." And the man said, "So according to your logic and way of thinking, if I put my hat on your car, it's mine?" And I thought, that's
go.
what the ego does, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's what the ego wants to own everything, including each other, you know?
I'm not in search for a trophy. I'm not in search for love. I'm not in search for more followers on Instagram or social media. When I started this journey years ago, and I realized that I'm going to be somebody, and I'm searching for a feeling of true victory for myself, and only myself. The second I shut out the whole world and realized that one thing, that I am in this world alone, I'm fighting in this race by myself. Yeah, I'm all about people, I'm all about team, I'm all about that shit, but I'm really all about right now and in my life, just like you said, no one knows the real truth about me, how hard I really go. I don't care if anybody knows. I don't want anybody to know. I'm an introvert. I live an introverted life, and I love that about me. That right there is my fuel, is I know that there's really no one out there grinding like me. And if they are, so be it. If I know about you, I'll make sure that I up my game. That's what the mentality is all about. My whole thing is a mentality thing. Like I told you the last time I was on the show, I viewed myself as the weakest person on the planet Earth. My goal in life was to, in my mind, believe I'm the hardest man alive. And that's why the whole thing is can't hurt me. That's what it's about. It's about whatever you think you are, you have to make that dream a reality. But that's where the hard part is making that dream reality. That's where the hard work comes. That's where people know, how do you keep grinding every day? You have to make those insecurities, those fears. Like when I was 300 pounds, I didn't have any drive. I'm gonna go be a Navy SEAL. What kind of stupid shit is that, 300 pounds? There wasn't like a drive to go be a Navy SEAL. I was an insecure, lying kid, afraid. I had to look at my insecurities and in my fear and find drive in that. We're all looking for passion. Passion's all around you. You have a whole fucking stack of it all around you. It's your insecurities, all that shit. You gotta dive deep in that shit. It's all in there. All the energy and fuel you need is right in yourself. It's all there. You got a lot of stuff to do to overcome. And that's where I found it. I found it right there in my own insecurities. I found drive in my own insecurities. And that's the most powerful thing in the world. When you can find drive in your own doubt, fear, insecurities, you become very unstoppable. Who is sitting here right now today? This is the real me, obviously. But I'm gonna go I'm a very philosophical person. And I'm gonna go there with you real quick. I believe in a higher power. Don't know the name, don't know where it's coming from, don't know anything like that. But I believe that this power, and visualize with me real quick. Let's say it's a man up there or a woman, whatever, and they have a chart. And when you're born, they say David Goggins, born February 17, 1975 at 6 a.m. They write the chart down because they can see everything. They know exactly what you're fucking supposed to be. They know what you're supposed to be. You die, you go to so-called heaven. You arrive at heaven, I'm 300 pounds. I retired as an Ecolab guy, which is okay, it's just a job, whatever. I go up there and God looks at me and he shows me my chart. And my chart on there says you were supposed to be a Navy SEAL. You're supposed to weigh 185 pounds. You're supposed to be one of the smartest people on the planet, this, all this. You see this. And now you're in heaven, you made it to heaven, but you're like, God, Doug, I was supposed to live that life.